Today on the podcast, we're going to be with Sharda Ryan from Wealth Design Group. Sharda and I met several years ago in a women's networking group, and I've always been so impressed by her commitment to supporting women in business through her work and also through her philanthropy and her volunteering. Let's meet Sharda. Hi, Sharda. I am so excited. Welcome to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yay. Okay. So for those of you who haven't met Sharda and don't know how we're connected, we actually are both on the board for Professional Women's Network of Monterey. So we've had a lot of time these last couple of years to get to know each other, to understand kind of work styles and strengths, right? Sharda and I actually have a lot of strengths in common as far as being organized and like understanding, looking at big pictures and things like that. So that's been really fun to have that connection. But clearly we're working in different, in different kinds of work. Sharda is, and as you can see on her background, if you're watching on YouTube, Wealth Design Group. So Sharda's in the finance world, talking to people about their money and their money goals and how they can get there. So Sharda, I would love for us to kick this off by learning a little bit about why you got into what you do now. Like, give us your kind of business origin story and let's let people understand why you do what you do.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Tracie. So, I didn't go to like Yale thinking or even go to Yale or Harvard or any of those colleges and say, oh, I'm going to be in finance once I graduate or anything like that. It was kind of an accidental origin story. So I've been a single mother for many years, since my early 20s. And so I was always in restaurant and retail management. And I was manager at a Starbucks in Sacramento. And there was this gentleman that always came in and would talk to me. And I had the feeling that he was maybe trying to sell me something, right?
Yeah.
Trying to like, hey, maybe I can help this person, kind of vibe that I got from him. So I finally sat down with him, and it turns out he was a financial advisor. And one of the, first questions that he asked me was, do you have life insurance? And what would happen to your daughter if something happened to you? And I had just kind of been in, survival mode, hustle mode. And I never really stopped to think, wow, what if something happened to me? Is she just going to have like my, piddly little one times my salary from Starbucks to take care of her? And where in writing did it say who I wanted to take care of her if something were to happen to me? So he was my first mentor. He really got me thinking about finances and how I could not only help myself, but how I can help people and other people and, women in particular. And it just became a passion of mine to learn as much as I could about not just life insurance, but financial planning. And that was back in about 2005. So I've been licensed since 2007.
For about 20 years then, almost 20 years. Did you
Yeah.
find when you were first finding out about kind of this thought process and kind of woke up to the fact that, yeah, it's up to me to make a plan, did you find other people that you were connected to, other coworkers and things like that you were like, not only for me and my daughter, but what about that? Like, did you start to see all of the people that potentially needed that kind of help as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny that you say that, because I noticed myself doing that, right? Like I'll start talking to a business owner, or I'll start talking to someone and they'll say, oh, well, I want to own the business, or I need to save money for retirement, or they just start talking about different things. And my mind just starts reeling like, oh, maybe it's almost like a problem solving, right? Like, you might need this, or you might need that. So actually, some of my first coworkers back at Starbucks have become my clients because we developed that trust, we had that relationship, and they saw that I was growing, and they wanted to provide the same for their families.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, and so in my mind, I'm imagining this story, right? You finally felt safe enough to ask the guy what he was all about, and he shared it with you. And then, you know, it's a fine line when you're starting a new business to figure out how to approach people, but you had already built these relationships with people who knew you and knew that you had your daughter. And like, when people get to see your journey, they get inspired and they feel safe enough to ask you about it, which is something that, if you hadn't built those relationships before, it probably never would have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line, because basically what I do, it is sales, right?
Yeah. Right.
But what is sales? Sales is service, is getting
Yeah,
paid for providing a service. So
absolutely.
in the beginning, I did kind of feel like, ooh, do I want to be that salesy person? Do I want to have that kind of like energy and vibe? And no, I don't. I was able to like grow into myself,
Yeah.
and attract people who had, common values, common energy. So it was, it's a little difficult, as with any job in the beginning, but the more you do it, the better you become, right?
Right. Right. Well, and since you have that sales is service mentality, you know that you're not doing it just to get a sale. And when you know that and you realize that that's really what it takes, right? The salesy stuff comes from people who are desperate to sell or don't care about the other person. They're just after the dollars, right? But when
Mhm.
you're in that space of really wanting to serve that other person and give them the security that you now feel as a client yourself, then it's so much easier to lean into the sales as service part. So I love that you use that phrase, because that's a phrase we always use and that I always use as well.
Mhm.
Okay, so almost 20 years ago, 18 years ago, you became licensed. But I know that you've had an evolution in your business as well. So talk to us about like what 2007 looked like and what maybe big bold decision you made over the course of your business that defined what you do today.
So we all can go back to 2007, right? It was right before the global financial crisis.
Oh, the
So
housing crisis. Yes.
yeah, and
Good times. Not
things were
so.
getting yeah things were getting a little strange, but they didn't really, explode until a year after I started. I
Yeah.
started part-time, just doing life insurance, like for my friends and family.
Yeah.
And I was actually, at that point, I was management at Target. And there was I'll never forget, there's a guy, I ran into him by accident, and he got literally within inches of my face and cussed me out. And I
Like
said,
in your job at Target, he
while
was
I was
like
working.
yelling at you as in your job.
Yeah. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm not working here anymore. I'm not putting up with this type of client. I'm not putting up with this kind of person,
Yeah.
anymore. So that night I went and started applying for different jobs, because I had had my life license, right, at MetLife. So my first, full-time job was at MetLife. And then
Okay.
I joined them. And then just like a few months later was the global financial crisis. I remember just coming into work and people were just kept talking about the stock market, just fell another 500 points or something like
Mm.
that. So it was a really strange time, but I was able to, work through that.
What an
And
educational time to be new in that job, newish in the field, and have everything change
mhm,
right from like drop out from under you basically, and figuring out what to do with that, and who has good thoughts about it and can move forward, and who is really going to like struggle with the new challenges, and how to align yourself, like you said, with the people who have the same values as you as far as being in a growth mindset and all of those kinds of things. What an incredibly interesting opportunity.
yeah. And it was a good learning experience, because I was able to learn how to have conversations with clients, right?
Yeah.
Because they're freaking out. They're cashing
Freaking
out
out.
their 401ks. They're having a really difficult time. So it was such a good learning experience. So whenever there are, like earlier this year, when there was the tariff tantrum
Mm,
in the markets, I was able to really draw on that experience and conversations and language that I would have with clients throughout the
yeah.
years, so that when things do happen, because it happens in the stock
It
market,
always
it goes up
happens.
and down.
Hmm.
Always. Yeah, it just depends on the severity, right?
Yeah.
And we have a saying that history, it doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So
Mm. Oh, I love that.
yeah, in the markets. So yeah, it was every day is a learning experience to be able to help your clients. And
Yeah,
those
I love that.
big events like the pandemic, um,
Yeah.
those just really enforce those even more, those
Yeah.
skills.
Well, I love that. And, that's something that I always talk about as well, the idea that while our specific instances are not exactly the same, it's like the phrase, like, we're all in the same boat, right?
Mhm.
That we're all in our own boats, actually, but the storm is the same storm. But depending on
I
how
like
big your
that.
boat is, it's going to be different. Your experience is going to be different, but we can have a common language around it. The pandemic is a great example. When I talk about losing my first husband, uh, who passed away, a lot of people can't relate to their partner passing away when they were 40 or whatever, youngish. But
Mhm.
what they can relate to is not understanding or experiencing a future that wasn't what they imagined, right?
Right.
Which really is what that whittled itself down to, is like, I had this imagination of our life together and life didn't turn out that way. The pandemic is the same way. We had this vision of what that next year or 2 years or 5 years was going to look like, and it didn't turn out that way. And it just keeps going the same way. There's always something that's going to pop up in the middle of us moving forward that just makes things not turn out the way we thought it was going to. And how do we navigate that?
Mhm.
And not only with expectations and emotions, but literally with our money and our situations and our lives. How do we navigate the details of getting through that next obstacle instead of letting it knock us down?
Right. Just keep testing our resiliency.
Yep, absolutely. So
Right.
at some point in all of this, you said to yourself, well, this is great. And I think that, so actually, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you, I know that a big turning point for you was when you narrowed your niche of who you were primarily working with.
Mhm.
So take us back to when that happened and what was the catalyst for that decision?
Yeah. Yeah. Early in my career, I worked at a couple big companies like MetLife and Waddell
Mhm.
and Reed and Franklin Templeton, and they always just had their own culture. They always wanted you to focus on what they wanted you to focus on,
Mhm.
maybe their product or their mutual fund.
Sure.
And
Well, of course
so,
they did, because that's their company, right?
exactly.
They're like, you're going to sell our thing first, and then you can do more.
Do it, yeah. Play if you want to play in our sandbox. And there was a lot of good old boy club, energy there as well.
Yeah.
But speaking of the pandemic, at the end of 2020, uh, I was at Franklin Templeton, and they laid off a bunch of people. They had bought a
Mm.
company, they merged with another mutual fund company. I can't even remember because there's so many mergers that happen.
Yeah.
And so I was one of the people that they laid off. And so I just reached out to my network. And someone that I knew long ago from MetLife, he said, "Hey, you should go talk to Gary at Wealth Design Group." And so Gary, he really embraced me and embraced my all of my skills and value and everything. And then we joined another gentleman. So there's three of us in our firm. And then also about during that time, or about a few months after that time, there had been a lot of wildfires in California, and
Mm-hmm.
so all of the smoke would sit in Sacramento for months, and it
Mm-hmm.
really was affecting my husband's health. And he had grown up in Marina, which is right down the street from here. And so he's like, we have to move. And so I said, okay, I guess we're going to move. So I went to Gary and I said, hey, we have to move to the Central Coast. And so I said, I'm giving you plenty of time. I can work remote. We can still work together, work remote, or I might have to just find something else. And he said, he was like, no, I want this to work. I want you to continue to, learn about his business and, to eventually become his succession. So I decided that when I moved that I'm like, okay, this is a fresh start. And I started a coaching program with this lady who coaches financial advisors. She's amazing, Stephanie Bogan. And she said, the best thing that you can do, the most efficient thing you can do as an advisor is to have a niche market. That way that you're the most effective in what you do and your clients are served the best, right? So
Yeah.
I said, you know what? I'm sorry, guys, but I'm tired of dealing with jerks. I was like, I'm going to start working with single professional women and mothers. And I'm also going to stop working for free. That was another thing that sometimes we do as advisors. We'll do a lot of service work, give a lot of advice, do a lot of work, and not really get paid for it in any way. So those were the two decisions that I made in when we moved in early 2022.
So how
And
did that go over with Gary?
oh, Gary's fine. Gary loves it. Yeah, Gary's
Awesome.
like all of the because he has clients, too, from years back, and any single women he always gives, lets me take the lead on.
Oh, great.
Glenn, same way. He's had some divorcees. He's had some, widowers and things or widows
Yeah.
and things like that. And they both just like, oh yeah, you need to talk to Sharda.
So kind of out of the three of you, you each kind of had your category of people that you would specialize in and like kind of cross hand off people as they came in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
sometimes,
great.
and we share them too. So sometimes it's ours and sometimes it's yours, and it all works out really well because
Awesome.
we all, respect each other's skills and passions. So that
Amazing.
was the bold move that I made. And I'm so happy that I did it. And it's so rewarding now because there's only about, I think 25% of advisors are female. So I like to be able to be that resource for women.
Yeah. I love that. And because it's true. So as a woman, right, we know that most of the most of the time, and especially as a women business owner, most of the time you go out networking, and if you find people who are in finance, now it's still different, I think, for me, just because I've cultivated a more female community
Mm-hmm.
across the board. But in general, before that happened, before I found PWN, before I found Polka Dot, all of these different communities of women, I would go to networking, and almost all of the finance people were male. And if there was a woman in there in the business, I would say she was a lot more like you in that she was on the feminine side. Like she really had made that departure from the kind of bro culture that, while you still work with men, and I'm sure they're fabulous, the way that you serve a woman is by relating to her, not by still acting like one of the guys, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was the other thing that you said? So not only niching down, not working for free. So let's talk about that. Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of advisors and a lot of people in business, honestly, myself included, I'll give free advice, I'll network, I'll tell people, like give people ideas, I do free workshops. Like that still is definitely a thing. But I think you're talking about even more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell us like what really changed for you from the whole I'm not working for free anymore. What were you doing? And how do you build influence with people now when maybe some of that isn't happening?
So there would be times where I'd be introduced to someone, just a random, prospect, we call them,
Sure.
and they wanted help with allocating their funds. They wanted advice
Mm-hmm.
on how to how to how to allocate their funds, what to do with them. But at the same time, they would never actually move the funds to myself so that I could get paid. And so I
Mm.
would be constantly chasing these, like everyone and anyone who fogged a mirror and had a dollar to try to get them as clients. And they would have um, it wouldn't matter how much they had. So now I have minimums as well. So you have to have this much money. This is how much it's going to cost. And if we can't work together, then sorry,
Then
maybe I
I'm
can
not the
refer
person
you.
for you.
Right. Maybe I can refer you to someone else. So it was a mind shift
Yeah.
change where instead of being like hungry for every dollar, when I said, okay, I was only going to do this and I was only going to do it until as far as like, until I got paid, because a lot of advisors do a lot of work and they don't get paid, or it takes a long time for them to get paid.
Mm.
Then things just started to really click. And
Yeah.
people appreciate that too, because they know exactly what you're all about. And if they, like you said, if they don't want to work with you, then, okay,
Then that's okay. Then they can move
move
on to
next
someone
one.
else that's
Yeah,
a better fit. Yeah. And so can
right.
you. So tell us, like, what does that look like for someone who's coming in, like a new client? So if someone new comes to you and they get referred to you, and you need to find out about them, obviously, and find out what their goals are and what they want to do and what they have and whether or not they're a fit. Like, what does that look
Mhm.
like when you're onboarding a new potential client, a new lead, and how do you find out whether or not there's someone that's for you?
Sure. So we usually we'll do like an initial complimentary consultation, right? So it'll
Okay.
be about a half an hour. So I'll just ask them a bunch of different questions about themselves, right? I let them talk a lot more than I talk.
Mhm.
So, your age, your goals, your
Family situation, job
income,
situation,
children,
income. Mhm.
right? How much money do you have? And then after I gather all of that information, then I say, I let them know, okay, these are the different ways that we can work together. You said you had, $500,000, you don't know what to do with it. We can just manage your $500,000. Or if you feel you need more of a comprehensive financial plan, then we can, arrange a fee for that as well.
And so what does that include when you say more comprehensive? So the idea of, like, here's my $500,000 that needs to be
Mhm.
invested in some way that is in line with my risk level or whatever, right? But if they need something more comprehensive, what does that mean?
So that would mean more of an in-depth financial plan. So we look at all of your expenses. We look
Okay.
at everything that you have that you're able to invest with, any money that potentially could come. And then what are your goals? Do you want to pay, do you have children? Do you want to pay for their college, or do you want them to, you know, maybe you'll pay for half of it, right? They can pay for the
Right.
other half.
Mhm.
Do you want to buy a house? When do you want to retire? Or do you just maybe want to retire from what you have now and maybe go into something else later at a
Oh,
different
okay.
age?
Right.
So it would be more in depth as far as all your cash flow and all of your balance
Got
sheet.
it. More of a
Mhm.
life plan as opposed to a plan for this kind of chunk of money.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love
And
that.
taxes and
Oh,
estate
yeah.
planning and all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Do you find that, like, for your client base these days, do you have more people kind of in that life planning section? Like, what are people looking at these days? What do you find most people are interested in?
Yeah, I do. I find, especially because the clientele that I serve, which are women are much more of a big picture when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to their finances and investing. They also tend to have not as much confidence, so they like the when it comes to money, just period. So
Hmm.
they like the in-depth planning.
Yeah. Do you find that you spend a lot of time kind of, I would imagine that you might spend time debunking myths or old thought, old thinking, like, because we're going to hold on to all of that knowledge that we've gained in the last 50 years. And a lot of that isn't really valid anymore,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or might not really apply to us as women at this kind of stage of our lives. Do you
Mm-hmm.
find that you spend a lot of time kind of re-educating incorrect information?
I would not say, I wouldn't say it doesn't, I don't spend that much time debunking
Okay.
myths. There's stuff that kind of floats around that I run into every once in a while. Mostly it's just education. And
Yeah,
then
just
a
from
lot of
zero as
time,
opposed to correcting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of time too, it's kind of like, okay, you're going a little too deep, Sharda. Like, I trust you. Let's just,
Yeah. I mean,
you
sometimes we
know,
just want the expert to go do her thing, and
yeah,
we're gonna go now.
yeah. I hear that a lot. Okay, I trust you, you know.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's part of, like, that's when you build that influence and they trust you, you can be like, well, let me tell you about this. And they're just like, you know what? I don't want to know all of that. Like, it's too much noise. I hired you. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah. And I've gotten, again, like I've gotten better throughout the years, that they don't want to know how the sausage is made, right? That they
Right.
don't need to know what Sharp ratio means. They just want to know that you're paying attention to their money and it's going to be there for what
Yeah.
they need it to be. Yeah.
Right. And, you keep them updated, plus minus flat, and let us know how
Right.
everything is
And
working.
why?
If it's working and why it's working, so you can capitalize on it. And if it's not working, why it's not working and how you can learn that for the future, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about other things that you do, because while you work with clients in this way, you also are really big into volunteering and supporting your community.
Mhm.
So, like I mentioned in the beginning, you and I met through PWN, and a part of PWN's mission is philanthropy to support women and girls in California with the charitable fund that we build every year. And you also are a Rotary gal, and you also work for another group, and I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. So talk about, like, that's 3 boards that you're on, that you are spending your free time for free, valuable time to support. So talk about why you do that, what you get out of it, and why you think it's important.
Hmm. I've always been pretty philanthropic and liked to volunteer. Even when I was at Starbucks, I dragged my daughter to go do the river cleanups and things like that.
Oh yeah, great.
And then just throughout the years, I've become about the past, I'd say 10, 15 years, becoming more in the leadership positions, right? So, like serving on boards. And in addition to being the secretary of PWN, I'm also the community service chair for the Downtown Salinas Rotary Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm also on the fund development committee and on the board of Girls Inc. of the Central Coast.
Which I love,
Yeah,
Girls Inc. That's great too. Awesome.
yeah.
And so did you kind of have this kind of philanthropic work, like, as like do you see it as like a mission that you have personally, or have you just kind of fallen into, like, oh, I met these people and that was fun, and oh, now I really want to, like, was it a goal
Mhm.
to spend your time that way, or did it just happen?
No, it was very intentional because I think that as business owners, it's our duty to give back to the community that provides us with our livelihood, right? And
Yeah.
Rotary very much has that service mentality. And I really enjoy Rotary also because I've met, some great friends, and also a lot of business leaders are in that community as well. So I
Mhm.
learned so much about Salinas, especially when I was brand new to the community. So that's why I enjoy Rotary, and it's, very deep, very special to my heart. And then as far as Girls Inc., they provide classes for girls from ages 8 to 18 that teach them how to be, smart, bold, and they will teach classes in schools. So there'll be one about social media, or one about
Mhm.
health, one about leadership. They have a class where they teach the girl and their parents about communication. Like, if I had that communication class with my little girl when
Well, that was going to be my question was like, how old was your daughter when you got involved with Girls Inc? Was she the beneficiary of any of their programs, or was it after she was already out?
No, I wish, because she's older now. She's, she's in her 30s, but I just thought, oh, if I had that, or if she had that when she was a girl, that would have been so amazing, because I really do believe that girls need that extra help when it comes to, and that extra knowledge and that extra education. They have a financial they have a budgeting class that they do as well. What about girls' health? It's just all
Yeah,
that
that's great.
extra stuff that girls need to become, great women.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That's a really big one for me that I really see is that it's that confidence building because you're learning about these things that, wow, other people like you end up with this knowledge as a young person that without that program you never would have learned. It's not something that's in your standard school. And other things can offer that too, like scouting can do some of that. Like there's similarities, I think, in those ways. Obviously, Girls Inc. has their own methodology, and the way that they go into the schools, I think, is really cool. Learned about
Mhm.
them just in the last year myself. So very thanks to you. So very cool. Um, yeah, well, I love that. And, being involved with 3 different organizations in that way is a lot of time. And
Mhm.
so I want to acknowledge you for, the volume of effort that you make in serving your community and helping these programs reach the people that they're trying to reach, because that really is a huge impact outside of you and your life and your household, right? You're making an impact out there in the world that is really important. And so I really admire you for that. That's really very cool.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to, this is a newer thing that we're going to be doing, but the Family Justice Center,
Yeah.
that's in its infancy here in Monterey County.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to start teaching, once they get up and running, literacy classes for the
Fantastic.
women. So yeah, that will be like the victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking. We'll teach them everything about credit, budgeting,
Yeah. So they don't
looking for
end
a
up in
job.
a bad situation or how to build out of their current situation, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it's 90% of victims of domestic violence are victims of financial abuse, because it's a way to
Yeah,
control. Yeah,
sure. It's a control thing. If they're working, if they're allowed to work, right,
right.
then they don't get to control the money that they make often, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's fantastic. I mean, that's something that most of the finance women that I do get to meet, that's their big thing is to teach young women, girls, young women, and older women too, but to break that historical situation of, the whole thing that, just a few years ago, we couldn't even get credit cards on our own or sign a loan, like all of those
Right.
rights, things that are still young, that,
Mhm.
there's a lot of change that still needs to be made. So thank you for doing that. I think that's really awesome as well. Anything I can do to help support that, please let me know.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah, amazing. Well, my friend, okay, so, the opportunities for people to get you're in the community a lot. Obviously, mostly you're working with people that you've met personally. How far can you work with anyone in California? Is it even only California? Like, what is your opportunity for working with people that might hear this episode and be like, that gal has the vibe that I'm looking for. I want to meet her
Yeah, I can work with anyone in the United States.
in the States. Okay, great.
Hmm. Hmm.
Awesome. And do you have, is that something like, because there's lots of differences across the country. And, we're here in California. Obviously, our situation might be different than someone who's living in Missouri or something
Sure.
like that. So,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
there's
obviously,
different rules. Different states have different rules as far as like community property and taxes and things like that. But as an experienced advisor, you kind of get the feel for what you need to ask and what you need to look out for.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Love that. Awesome. And I know that we'll put in the show notes, how people can reach you and everything.
Mhm.
So if you're listening to this and you're a woman, business owner, mother, single women, business owner, mother, right? That's kind of the definition, right?
Mhm.
Um, then you're going to want to talk to Sharda and just figure out whether or not it's the right fit. Because I think there's also a lot of concern or fear if you've never worked with a financial advisor before.
Right.
What does that even feel like? And so
There
with
is.
with the with the complimentary consultation, it's just a conversation. So you might as well have it, and then more. And when we know
Exactly.
more, we can make changes and do things differently.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you have anything like wrap up wise that you'd like to share as we close out the episode?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. And I mean, I hope that my passion for helping women really comes through because I think money's one of the most important things. And the more you have control and education around it, I think the better that you are, the better you can serve your family and your community and those around you. So
Yeah. Great. I love it. Well, I
mhm.
know that you're super passionate about it, and I hope that everyone else gets that from this as well. And I want to thank you for being here on the Bold and Brilliant podcast. And we'll talk to you again super soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharda. Thank you for listening to the Bold and Brilliant podcast. I'm your host, Tracie Root, and I want to invite you to check out the show notes, find out where you can connect with our guests, find out more about what I and the Gather community have to offer you, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform. Thanks so much.